It was the opening match of the 2026 World Cup. Mexico against South Africa, not for a foul. And in the 22nd minute, the referee blew his whistle. Estadio Azteca, 80,000 fans. Not for an injury, not for anything that happened on the pitch. He stopped the match because the players needed water. That's the official story. But here's what actually happened. The players were ready to play. The referee was ready to restart. And the match stayed paused because the broadcast was still showing a commercial. This is not a conspiracy theory. This happened on camera in front of millions of people. And it's only the beginning of this story. Let's go back to December 2025. FIFA announced a new rule for the 2026 World Cup. For the first time in the tournament's history, every single match, all 104 games, would include mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks, one in each half, around the 22nd minute, and again around the 67th. The official reason sounded simple, even reasonable. The World Cup was being played across the United States, Mexico, and Canada in the middle of summer. Some host cities would see temperatures and humidity levels higher than what players faced in Qatar, a tournament that had to be moved to winter just to stay safe. FIA's tournament officer explained that referees could even call the break a little early if needed. If there was already a stoppage near the 20th or 21st minute, they could use that moment instead. On paper, this is player welfare. Nobody can argue against keeping athletes safe in extreme heat. But then came the detail that changed everything. FIFA confirmed that broadcasters were free to use these 3-minute windows for commercials, not as an emergency exception, as a built-in, expected part of the format. And that's when people started asking the obvious question. Is this about player safety? Or is this about selling airtime? For a few days, this was a theory, a suspicion, a thing people joked about online. Then match after match started confirming it. FIFA's chief tournament officer in the United States, Manolo Zubiria, made the rule completely explicit in a statement before the tournament even began. 3 minutes, twice a match, multiplied across all 104 games of the tournament. That adds up to more than 10 hours of guaranteed airtime. Airtime broadcasters can sell to advertisers, scheduled and predictable match after match, regardless of what the weather actually calls for. Fans noticed the same thing happening over and over, game after game. FIFA is making a lot of money already from sponsors, one viewer wrote online. They actually use the cooling break excuse just to get a commercial break. That's how it works, wrote another. It's obvious they want to make their money back, said a third. This wasn't a one-time complaint about one unlucky match. This became one of the single most discussed storylines of the entire group stage. Not the goals, not the upsets, the breaks. Here's where this story stopped being just a fan complaint. Virgil van Dijk, captain of the Netherlands, one of the most respected defenders in the world, addressed it directly. More than once as the tournament went on. He said he'd been watching almost every game in the tournament so far, and every single time the broadcast cut to commercials during these stoppages, it became, in his words, a bit annoying, and not great for neutral fans watching at home either. Then he made the exact point critics had been making for days. If it's genuinely hot, he said, then fine, put the break in. But in his opinion, every game should be looked at separately rather than applying the same rule no matter the conditions. That distinction matters enormously. Van Dijk wasn't rejecting player safety. He was rejecting the idea that this was actually about safety in the first place, given that his own match had a closed roof and controlled climate, and the break happened anyway. Asked again about it after another fixture, Van Dijk chose his words carefully but didn't soften the message. He said hydration breaks were really interesting, then, with a slight laugh, repeated that he didn't love the constant cut to commercials, that it wasn't great for fans, and that conditions should be assessed match by match rather than automatically enforced everywhere. This wasn't a one-off comment dismissed as one player's opinion. By the time the group stage was underway, Van Dijk had become one of the most visible voices in a growing list of critics. Players, broadcasters, and pundits all raising the same question from different angles. And the broader numbers backed him up. Critics calculated that with the break occurring at almost exactly the midpoint of each half, the 22nd and 67th minute, it landed in close to the ideal slot to insert a commercial segment without disrupting the broadcast too dramatically. One widely shared post compared the new structure to American football, accusing FIFA of effectively dividing the World Cup into something resembling NFL quarters, broken into commercial-friendly segments instead of two continuous halves. And it wasn't just commentary from the stands. Multiple matches across the tournament showed something else worth noting. noticeable momentum shifts immediately after these stoppages, teams coming out of the break with a different rhythm than they had going in. Hardly surprising, given that a 3-minute pause functions in practice almost identically to a timeout. Booing over commercial breaks isn't happening in empty stadiums or quiet press rooms. It's happening match after match at the biggest sporting event on the planet. Now let's pause for a second and be fair, because not everyone in football hates this rule. Some coaches have actually defended it, and for reasons that go beyond hydration. French manager Didier Deschamps said publicly that he's a fan of the breaks, not just because of the heat, but because they give him a chance to talk tactics with his players mid-half, something he called a genuine advantage for coaching. He explained it clearly. With temperatures being what they are, having 2 extra opportunities during the match to adjust your team is valuable. He acknowledged it splits the rhythm of the game, but said his team has prepared for that and adapted. This is an important point. Some coaches see this not as a flaw, but as a tactical tool, a chance to recalibrate mid-half in a way that didn't exist before. Conditions across some host cities in the U.S. genuinely do involve extreme heat and humidity. Research before the tournament had already flagged this as a real risk, comparable to, or worse than, conditions in Qatar that forced the entire 2022 tournament to move to winter. So this isn't a situation where FIFA invented an excuse out of nothing. The heat risk is real. The science behind player hydration is real. The problem isn't that hydration breaks exist. The problem is what FIFA chose to attach to them. Here's the detail that breaks FIFA's entire defense. If this is truly about temperature and player safety, why are these breaks mandatory in every single match, including games played in air-conditioned, climate-controlled stadiums? Fans asked exactly this question once they noticed hydration breaks taking place in domed, temperature-controlled venues where no player was at any real risk of overheating. If the break exists for heat management, it should only apply when heat is actually a factor. Instead, it's applied uniformly, every match, every stadium, every condition. It's also, conveniently, a guaranteed, predictable slot that broadcasters can sell to advertisers in advance. That predictability has commercial value all on its own, heat or no heat, which means the heat is not the only variable being optimized. The schedule is a 3-minute perfectly timed window, once each half, every match, no exceptions, is not just a safety protocol. So picture every match of this tournament all at once. 104 games, each one paused, twice, at almost exactly the same minute. Players standing on the pitch, ready to play. A broadcast truck somewhere rolling a commercial most fans couldn't even name an hour later. Multiply that by every match played so far, and you get more than 10 hours of football that didn't belong to the players. It belonged to the advertising schedule. Maybe that sounds like a small thing, but maybe, just maybe, this is exactly the kind of small thing that adds up. Empty seats from ticket prices nobody could afford. Visa chaos that kept federation presidents and referees out of the country entirely. A 7-1 scoreline that exposed the gap created by rapid expansion. And now a stoppage built into every single match that looks less like player care and more like ad inventory. None of these stories on their own prove the World Cup has lost its soul, but together they're starting to tell a story FIFA doesn't want told. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If every controversial decision at this tournament keeps lining up with FIFA's revenue interests, at what point do we stop calling it coincidence? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this video made you see the tournament differently, you already know what to do.